Wait, I'm supposed to start streaming. We're supposed to be.
You're terrible.
There we go. All right. So, we were going to talk about gaming. Did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool. So, this is our first time with a little bit of show prep. I'd say maybe like 5 minutes, some typing. And we're going to try and break 20 minutes into games we played as kids, and then 20 minutes into what we liked about 20. I shouldn't be talking about the segments, apparently.
Nope.
It's not very professional.
You plan things out 80% and then you just fly by the seat of your pants. I'm a professional.
So, you chime in whenever, and we'll just talk a bunch, if that works for you.
Okay, that works.
So, what do you know about, like, what kind of gaming did you do any gaming growing up?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I played chess and checkers with my grandpa. And I don't really remember much about chess, but we did play it. And we loved Monopoly. My mom always beat everyone. And I remember playing Mousetrap a couple times and Snakes and Ladders. Those were popular in our house.
You would almost think we planned this. That's awesome. So like the first thing on our list is the mass market games, which are basically everything you said plus Uno, Clue, and
Life.
Life. I don't know if
That's
anybody
a
considers that a
classic
game. And then like cards. So my first experience with gaming, probably in my life, is my father's poker night. Which
I never played.
You've never played poker?
No.
That's probably healthier.
I cannot stand poker.
It's hard to swallow. Every time I look at a game now, I look at it through the eyes of a designer, and I think of agency and these decision points and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of these mass market games, including all forms of poker, don't really hold up for that.
Poker just stresses me out. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm betting dollars or pennies or Tootsie Rolls. Like, betting just stresses me out. I do not enjoy it at all. I might lose all my Tootsie Rolls. I'll be very upset.
So Mara and I, our background, I guess it's not weird, but I knew her brother through gaming stuff before she and I ever met. So
that's an interesting story.
Yeah, so her younger brother, I didn't know she existed, actually. How much younger is your brother?
5.5 years.
So,
no, 4.5 years.
Okay, so, and I met him at a game store, essentially that I grew up in. I learned to play chess when I was, I went to my first chess tournament. I was 8, I think, or 7.
I thought you were going to be like knee-high to a grasshopper or something. Clever like that.
That's not clever. So I learned to play chess when I was very young. Went to my first tournament, and at my first tournament, I learned how to play Magic, which is the card game that I then played at my game store for ever, basically. I played it many, many years. But Mari's family was deeper into the more strategic board game stuff. So my gaming history was this big block of Magic, a lot of role-playing games, some tabletop miniature games. And then I met her brother, who got me into Avalon Hill style heavy strategy games.
Okay, that's cool. We played a lot of cards too, but we played like War and Crazy Eights and Gin Rummy, which I don't even remember the rules for anymore. But
So what are your memories of Monopoly?
My mom always winning, and that Park Place was the best spot.
Okay.
We usually did the shortcut version, and we always had the jackpot in the middle. So you would put, toss 50 in, and then any time that you had to pay to get out of jail and stuff, you would toss it in the middle, and you could collect the jackpot. So.
Did you play, if you land on the property and you didn't want to buy it, you would auction it off?
No, we did not do that. That's cool though.
Yeah, we started doing that just because it moved the game along a lot faster. Like then you were more likely to get monopolies and could start building.
I think that's the actual rules.
That might be.
So I learned that because I got a disc for my computer that was Monopoly. Because I guess my family was done playing with me, so they bought me a computer game.
Yes,
But that's the default, is that you do a thing if you don't buy it at auctions to the table.
We like to shuffle up the property and pass it out, and then we trade from the get-go.
that's a good start.
Yeah,
Because it makes the game a lot shorter.
Yes.
it can be pretty unbearable. Monopoly especially has a really bad rap in the more strategic gaming community.
Well, it's hard too playing with kids because when it's not your turn, there's nothing for you to do. And so the memories I have playing with other families with kids was that it took you like a minute and a half to call the kid back to the game. Like, Jason, it's your turn. Where's Jason? Go find Jason. Bring him back. All right, Jason. And then Andrew. Where's Andrew? Okay, we got to go find. And then it was like an hour. Nobody had Monopoly. Everybody had lost interest. Except, so my one brother, Mason, is like 5 years younger. And then Paul is another 6 years after that. So when Paul was born, my most vivid memories of Monopoly were playing while Paul was taking a nap. And he only slept for like an hour and a half maybe. So Mom and Mason and I would do a session of Monopoly, but you had to be done by the time Paul woke up, otherwise it just kind of deteriorated into chaos.
With Emmett, when we've played with him, we usually let him move the pieces because he likes math a lot. And so he likes to just know where the piece goes. He does it really fast in his head, so usually that keeps him occupied until it's his turn. He moves everybody's pieces for them.
Yeah, so my skills with math, especially these small numbers, just, I think, massively excelled. But it was probably the only math-related thing that I felt successful at because it was inside the realm of gaming. So, like I said, I played a lot of Magic, and Magic is an efficiency type of game. So you want to calculate turns in advance. Basically, but that's not where the math came from. The other game I played was the tabletop miniatures games, and that's these buckets of dice, and you just roll them. You flash recognize successes basically, and sometimes you add pips together depending on the game. And so rolling multiple dice together and adding 3-4 values basically instantly came from role-playing games and these tabletop miniature games, which was not a skill that I would have developed in math, especially since it's sort of a toggle, right? Like it's an either or, and I always recognize myself as better or more proficient with literature and English and the softer skills, I suppose.
The humanities.
The humanities, there we go. I couldn't come up with the word. Ironic.
Sorry.
But we were talking about other games that you came into, or you played as a kid, right?
Yeah.
You listed Wildlife Adventures and...
Yeah, so my mom sold Discovery Toys, which I don't know if they're even still a thing.
It's like the Usborne of yesterday.
It was the Usborne of toys.
Right.
Which she sold them only because then she got the like 20% off or whatever kind of thing. But they carried Ravensburger games, which at that time, I don't know if you could even buy a Ravensburger game
in a store, and the internet didn't exist because it was 1980. You mail order them.
Right, from Germany. But they had like Wildlife Adventure, which was kind of interesting because it was a map of the world and there were different endangered animals on it, but there were 3 lines that you made across the world, but everybody used the same lines. So you weren't moving just your pawn along. And from that game, I remember, because we would play at family holidays sometimes with my grandmother and my uncle, and I remember very clearly the day that my grandmother was talking about, like, if you laid a line on one side of the board, you would come out on the other side of the board because it was the world, but it was flat. And she just thought, like, you put a line down here, and then because of the game, you come out on the other side. And my uncle was like, Mama, it's the world. It's round. And she was like, really? Is that why you can do it? And he was just like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe you're an adult right now. You didn't realize that was the whole purpose. But, so got some geography in that game. World is round.
Yeah, and it's fun to look at now because what was endangered then is often extinct, or what's even better, not endangered anymore, which you wouldn't expect it. But I guess we picked up...
The bald eagles have recovered.
Yeah, the bald eagles or some other...
California condor. I don't know.
There's lemurs in Madagascar, which I guess are still reasonably. And I guess he's still endangered because just Madagascar, but they're pretty well protected over there now, which is it's encouraging.
And every now and then I'll run into like a Saigia antelope, and I'm like, I know what that is because of this game.
Right?
Who knew? I'm gonna go check on our children because I promised Linus I would. I'll be right back.
That's fine.
Carry on.
So. Again, getting out of our order, all our show prep, we talked about or we played these unlock games tonight, or one of the unlock games, and it's like a escape room in a box thing. It's replayable.
Yeah,
it's
Emily
really
cool. Wants to do that again.
Oh yeah, he played. So they're really awesome. But this one, I don't know what it was. It might have been the time or something. But it freaked out Linus, who is pretty immune to the freak out most of the time. So I don't know. Duncan and Linus are lying in our bed listening to a podcast with all of the stuffed animals as guards. So that's what the go check on them is about.
That's funny.
Alright, had to hug all the children and all the stuffed animals. I'm back.
We have someone else in here.
Whoa.
But, yeah, I know. What a turnout. Apparently. Yeah,
I
anyway.
actually thought Homeschool Roundup was last Sunday, and so, like, I waited on there for a little while, and then I was like, maybe I should check the calendar again. I was like, oh, it's next week. No wonder nobody showed up.
I'm wrong most of the time too. I always check because we were going to do it every week, and then we realized that was definitely not going to happen. I mean, we get interrupted in the 1 hour that we set aside, which is fine. We're happy that they need us, but so we do it every other week, and then we send the. It's weird. We send the. I'm going to try and send it out. I don't think it's too much of a pain just getting one more email. What do you think?
No, I get like more than 100 emails a day, so one extra one isn't a big deal.
So you may not be the perfect judge for the irritation.
Right. It doesn't irritate me. I actually wasn't too sure about the app on my phone, but I decided to download it earlier because I was like, I'll give it a try. It's working out pretty well.
Yeah, it's pretty low. It doesn't seem to be pushy, which is really nice. Sometimes these apps can be really pushy. I don't know, and it's worked really smoothly for us when we've used it to do the. I watch the kids with it, like. I let them go a greater distance than I normally would, but I give them a tablet and log them into Discord, and then I can hear them on their bike.
Extended baby monitor.
It really is. It's super weird, but I want to give them space. But anyway, so yeah, it's a great tool for basically anything, and I love that it's not owned by some mega corporation yet. Amazon hasn't bought it yet. So.
I'm talking to other homeschool parents.
Ah, you have the same thing.
Yeah, when he heard about me saying that he wants to play that again, he was like, what, Chuck E. Cheese? So you know I'm on the phone.
Nice. So the other thing, what were we going to talk about? I don't know how to follow our show prep thing here.
You only got
Well,
to
the
plan
main
80%.
idea was talking about using games for homeschool, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. So obviously, I value games because I grew up on them. Met Mari through them. So we met each other at a mystery dinner, which is just like it's like a role playing thing with dinner, which I had done a bunch of. So they played a really significant part of my life, and I always felt that stuff stuck with me more through gaming than virtually anything else. I learned how to spell tsunami because I played Magic and I like destroying islands. Like there's a card that just boom, get all the islands, and that stuck with me, which just seems incredible. So as an adult, it's easy to look back and think I learned all the math skills like we talked about, plenty of vocab, animal, geographical stuff.
A lot of geographical stuff. Because I remember a few years ago when Russia was annexing Crimea, and they were talking about Ankara, and I'm like, I know where Ankara is, and because I play diplomacy, like I know why it's important. Like that is your Black Sea port. Whoever controls Ankara can get to the Mediterranean. I understand.
Yeah, the geography. Yes. And honestly, if board games excel at anything, it is the geography and war stuff. Because now I don't even know what the number is, but probably 100 times the number of board games right now printed in a single year than there were available to us in the early 90s, period. Because they are just taking off, which is awesome.
Well, and talking about being a lot more accessible, back in the 90s, there were like the Civil War set, but you had to be ready to read a 60-page instruction manual and then commit 10 plus hours to play the actual game, whereas now there's stuff like 1775, which is it's still accurate, but it's much more user-friendly in that you have a manageable instruction manual and you can sit down and play a game in an hour.
Yeah.
And still get something out of it.
Yeah, I would say the progress of war games, everybody knows Risk, right? And then if you've played a little bit of war games, you know Axis and Allies. And if you've played Axis and Allies, you might move into some of these other more modern ones. There's the Conflict of Heroes series, the Tide of Iron. There's tons of these World War II things. And then the cooler thing about it is that there's even more narrow, which is, school always goes into these like broad strokes of this is World War II, this is more or less why things happened.
Mm-hmm.
But
you play diplomacy and you will know why World War I happened.
Right, yeah.
You will know why Austria and Germany needed to be friends. You will know why England was kind of isolated. You're like, crap, it makes me 5 moves to get my ship anywhere. Like, how am I supposed to become involved in this?
And you can become very interested and very focused in a thing. And the board games just have something for you. It's like Poland 1939 to 42 or something. I don't know what, like, it's tight. It's tightly regional. It is specifically that. It's the forces involved, the terrain, everything that they had available to them too. And then the good broad games like 1775. We got
diplomacy.
Diplomacy.
Colonial diplomacy.
Colonial diplomacy is not a good game.
All right. Well,
15 hours to a 5-way draw or something was the last time we played it.
There was like Ireland diplomacy.
There's all different. Yeah, there's all different forms. But once you get into it, once you get into the gaming, all of that stuff becomes more accessible.
But coming off of Risk, like diplomacy was the first game that I realized you could play a game without chance. Like there was no dice rolling, there was no card drawing. It was just you and your players figuring out how you wanted to play the game, which was a very neat and new perspective to have on board games.
Right. It sounds like a really great way to learn. I mean, when I was in public school, I had a really hard time remembering history because I'm terrible at remembering like dates and names. I'm really good at remembering images and things that I experienced myself, you know. So when I had this one teacher he was my history teacher for two different years. And he was ADHD and dyslexic. So he made learning really creative because that was the only way he could do it. So he had a lot of games like Jeopardy and stuff for us to learn and study with. It was a lot more fun and interactive, and I was able to remember things better about history with him as my teacher.
Yeah, I mean, in ninth grade, I had a science teacher that was what he did too. He focused on these games with a simple quiz to follow, which it's not a full game. It's not immersive, but it's something. You put, like, as a student, you're able to, it's different. You're putting value on it. You're interacting. There's usually some sort of kinesthetic component. We would chuck wet paper towels at the chalkboard. Like, we'd draw these big chalk bullseyes, and then we'd get a paper towel, soak it in the sink, and you get a shot. If you answer a question, you get a shot, and you score as many points as your big sloppy paper towel ball lands on the chalkboard. It's a
little messier than our version with the trash can.
Yeah.
Our teacher would put tape on the floor, and we'd have to shoot from a farther distance into the trash can.
Yeah, but it works, and so there's certainly evidence that when you put not that competition is the thrill here, but that you are. How about
immersed. The not just?
It's more like immersing you into it, like you become a part of what you're learning rather than just reading and hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
What are you pointing at, honey?
What was that?
I pointed it at the screen. Mara was unsure what I was pointing at.
It sounded like oinking. I was like, what's going on?
There's no oinking. There's zero oinking going on.
What are you oinking at? That is not a game that I've played recently.
The what are you oinking at game?
Yeah.
You could be. You could make it a game.
We were doing something with the Three Little Pig. It's at the game board thing.
Oh, that's right. Did you guys?
We
did. We played Grim Forest. Did you guys enjoy it?
Yeah, Emmett really likes it. He wants us to get it. I don't know if we will, but we're looking forward to playing it again.
A borrow is available if you're interested, because it's pretty pricey because the miniatures in it are really nice. I only picked it up because I had been going to my friend's game shop. And I had gone in like 10 times and not bought anything. So it was on my list as a thing I might like, and I picked it up. Plus, I paint miniatures, so...
Yeah, you showed me the one. It's really cool.
Yeah,
but
they're really...
we're a little limited on space, so I'm like
oh, that's right.
not to buy extra stuff.
Sure. Yeah, but yeah, and Grim Forest, you can see that if you stretch, you can find some value in a game like Grim Forest. Hey!
I've been trying to get the microphone to work the whole time.
I couldn't. I didn't know. I wasn't sure if you just wanted to listen in or if you were trying to make the mic work. Sorry.
Finally figured out how to unmute it, and then I talked, but I have to be much closer apparently.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't see it picking up at all.
I have nothing to contribute as of so far, so just carry on.
Okay, well, good. Just to warn you, we're recording and streaming to YouTube. No one's watching, so you're perfectly fine. But
great. Okay, awesome.
So if you feel like if something is like welling up in you and you just want to spurt out your social security number, I'd advise against it.
Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah,
I'm on it.
Pick a code name.
Right, yeah.
Code names. That's a good game.
See, I'm a little behind on that, too. Like, cool, unknown names, and here I am in the middle.
Right. Grim Forest. Grim Forest is one of those games that I find a lot of trouble figuring out what the educational thing is. And
what value are we getting out
I'm
of
just
this?
like, as a homeschool instructor, okay, if I were to write on my evaluation of progress, like if I'm evaluating myself, what do I say Grim Forest provided for us? Other than we took turns, I guess.
Math, when they have to figure out how many they have to trade in to get a roof for a floor or the walls. And then there's the storytelling aspect, like, learning different parts of the story and how to use friends, when to use friends. Like, I could see lots of different qualities coming from that. You could even make like sub assignments off of it, where they like have to write down, like take notes on what happened in the story, and then they have to write a short story based on what they did, kind of like a writing challenge, creative writing challenge.
That's true. I would say that that's what I did most with the game and what I enjoyed most, because the game is sort of dry is probably not the right word, because the art, like, it comes alive because of the components, but the actual function of the game felt a little dry. So while during the
slow to get it going.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't help that we had another table learning a game very loudly. I don't. It was just like they were talking about it, and they were just like, Russ, we need help with the rules. Okay. Currently, I'm over here, but yeah. So just getting into it was a little bit slow, and I forgot you do divide.
Yeah.
You divide with the remainder. So if you get 3 people that go to a hayfield, and you've got 10 there, that's early level math, but I mean that's something.
It's good for the younger kids to practice their math.
Yeah. And they probably don't yelp about it as much as they do. If my children are any indication, the math is often someone crawling upside down under the table and howling.
While answering the question.
Right, yes. Well, I'm tired.
7 remainder 2.
So, but, so even there, even the game that I think has very little value, you can find a lot of stuff in. So, what is it? You want to do top 5s?
Sure.
Mari and I wrote down top 5s. I think I lost. Oh, here's mine. Of things, and we kept it secret from each other. And I'm gonna talk about it because I want to hear hers.
Oh.
What do you want to do? Do you want to do yours first? I don't know.
Go
We have a top 5 educational, and then the top 5 we like playing with kids, and then we did our top 5 overall, or I did. I don't know if she got it.
I did. Well, I can. It may be more than 5.
Okay.
So I games to choose from. All right, top 5 educational.
Yeah, these are the best ones.
Okay.
All right, what's your number 5?
Oh, I didn't rank them.
Oh.
Was I supposed to rank them? All right, number 5 is. I'm making
You
up
can't
the
say I
rank
didn't
now.
rank them and then rank them.
Well, I'm ranking
All right,
them
go ahead.
now.
Okay.
Number 5 would be Santorini.
Oh.
Do I need to tell you why?
Sure.
Well, it does a very good job of Greek mythology. Like, you definitely, but I don't know how high on the priority scale that should be.
Very.
Well, okay. But definitely learned
the
about
Greek mythology.
Right, Greek gods, goddesses, heroes.
Okay.
Most of which I cannot pronounce. And then the game itself is a very good strategy game.
It's an abstract strategy game, which is checkers and chess fall in that.
I'd say it's somewhere
Same.
between checkers and chess.
Right, yeah. So Santorini's on my list too, but it's not number 5.
Oh, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is Timelines.
That's a good number 5. Why?
Timelines, I don't know if either of you have played it. It's just a stack of cards with dates, and it's it's got a picture and it's got the thing, and on one side it's just the picture and the thing. On the other side it adds the date, and basically the goal is to put it correctly in a timeline that you've built.
So it's like flashcards for history timeline.
And it really is. And the game is that is the game. First person to run out of cards wins. So that's why it's my number 5, because I think it's very educational in the thing that I would never learn, which is dates, and I just can't do that. But as far as a game,
You have to have a strong concept of history before playing it, or it helps build the historical kind of confidence.
So you don't have to have a strong concept really, because you just take a shot basically. And so the only strategy that really comes in with it is you've got a 400-year gap over here and you got a 30-year gap over here. I feel pretty good about the 400-year gap. Like what
Right.
we ran the
Process
first
of
transatlantic cable. This feels about right. And then you flip it over and you realize, ha ha ha, I was super wrong. But the punishment's really gentle. You don't feel too bad about it.
And it works well with the kids because there's some things that we're obviously going to have more of a sense about than they do. But then there's like, when was the first hot air balloon? And I'm like, somewhere between 1,000 and 1,800.
Right, and it's as a person that's interested in knowledge, I often want to double check their numbers. Like, what do you call a hot air balloon?
Let me Google that. See what Wikipedia says.
But they're also these
researching,
they're like $10 and better than any history book that you're going to find. So that's my number 5, timelines.
All right, number 4. I'm gonna what?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna say wildlife adventure because it does good world geography. Teaches you that the world is round. So if you go out one side, you come back in the other. Also teaches you interesting things about animals.
All right.
And somewhat strategy cooperation, not just moving your pawn around.
That is true. Yeah, there's these little arrows on it, and they can't double back on themselves. So you can really get somebody by pushing the arrow past their endangered creature, which ethically I'm not sure what we're doing there. Like, I don't want you to save the bald eagle. We're headed straight to the eye. Screw your bald eagle, I guess is what happens.
Well, but they don't know you have the bald eagle.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Which is also, but if somebody else touches yours on the way, so you have to pay attention even when it's not your turn. So
Right.
that was good, playing with kids.
My number 4
Okay.
is photosynthesis, which is
Interesting.
sort of the opposite of why I did number 5. So there's an opportunity to talk about photosynthesis, obviously, but as a game, it's very interesting. So it's got its core game type mechanics, the strategy, you're like the stuff you get to choose to do is very good. And then just as a discussion point, you can talk about photosynthesis. Basically, talk about plant life as far as you want to talk about it.
So does it like quiz you on carotenoids and stuff like that?
Nope. It has nothing to do with photosynthesis whatsoever.
At all? Okay.
You are a tree. You are a type of tree, and you plant your acorn, and then you grow it into a little tree, and then you grow it into a medium tree, and then you grow it into a big tree, and then you harvest it for some points. But it's an economic game because you're getting, the bigger your tree is, the more sun points you collect, and the more sun points you have, the more things you can do. But you chop down your big tree, and then you're not going to get so many sun points.
Okay.
Yeah. So from an educational perspective, it's loose. You have to carry your own education to the game. It's not going to teach much. But
Definitely not what I expected.
right.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the game itself is neat because there's this big competition for the sunlight, which isn't really the way
But the sun changes in the board because the board is set up and then the sun moves around it. And if you're a short tree standing behind a tall tree, you don't get your sun points because you're in the shade. But then as the sun moves later, you will get sun points because you're no longer shaded.
Right. So the reaction from the kids is the game does a pretty good job of making you feel like you're doing good things, but nobody gets punished horribly because the sun rotates around the board. So when you're playing with the kids, sometimes they're just like, "Oh, I got you," and then the next turn the sun turns and you're fine again. But they get thrilled about that, and as soon as they get thrilled about something, they're more interested and open for discussion. And just the discussion in general for the game is going to lean towards something scientific.
Blue-orange game, I see.
It is a blue-orange game.
They do spot it, don't they?
They do spot it. They're a good company.
Yeah.
Was it Ileo? I can't spell it. I don't know how to pronounce it. What's the one that does... Oh, King Domino's blue-orange too, right? I think it is. Yeah. But Blue Orange is a good company. You have some faith that if they make a kids game, that it's pretty decent. There's another one that does pretty good kids games. It's not coming to mind though. What's your number 3?
Number 3, I'm going to go with 1775 because it's easy enough that kids can hack it. It's historically accurate. It gives you an idea of the different players just besides America and Britain in the Revolutionary War. So for historical accuracy and playability, 1775. What do you got?
My number 3 is Hammer of the Scots.
Holy crap.
We're not there with the kids yet.
We've never even made it through a game of that.
Well, because
like Winter
you're a
came,
lightweight.
Edward had to go back to England, and that was the end of Hammer of the Scots.
Edward Winter's in England. It's just the way it works. It's a little bit heavier. It's not a heavy war game. It's a heavy strategy game. It's not. It's an old game. Columbia Games used to make these block games, I guess, but they're wooden blocks, and you've got an army strength. And Hammer of the Scots made my number 3 because I like the strategy in the game. There are certain games, and 1775 is one of them, where you can retreat through enemies, which is my favorite thing in the entire world to do, because it makes the board huge and it creates fronts, and all of that feels like really deep strategy, and you get a couple of getcha turns that raise the excitement in the games. So Hammer of the Scots is, again, I talked a little bit about how board games can focus down on periods, and Hammer of the Scots does a really good job of being a focus on a period that if they become interested in it, will open them up to a whole well of history. Haven't played with the kids yet, it's a little too heavy.
Who have you? Have you actually finished a game?
Yeah, I played a game with Mason
okay.
and Craig. He's an old timer from the store.
Alright.
I guess I'm an old timer now.
Yep.
Oh.
We number 2?
Number 2.
Number 2.
You used all my good ones.
Love Letter. There is nothing. Yes, because that game.
Say it again.
Love Letter.
Oh, okay. It kind of broke up when I heard it.
Yeah, so there's nothing like core subject matter, but that is the first game that the kids got deductive reasoning in. And it was because at certain parts in the game you can guess what another person is holding, and they're only a certain number, like there's 2 number 2s and 2 number 3s and 2 number 4s, and that was the game that they realized, if I can see both of the number 4s out on the table already, I should not guess a number 4. So easy to learn, easy to play, definitely teaches logic and reasoning.
Critical thinking is important.
And that's a board game attribute for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess Love Letter is pretty good. If we put value on it too, right? These, like, Love Letter is $8, and we have played it
a million times.
Yeah, somewhere approaching infinity, which is everything. But so Mari has usurped my number 1 and number 2.
What was number 2?
Number 2 is Santorini.
Okay.
For me.
For the same reasons I listed.
And you learn about Santorini has blue roofs.
Okay. It's a caldera.
It's like, well, that they don't cover that.
They don't.
But yeah, so I just love Santorini because of the Santorini. So Santorini, talking about Santorini is a good lesson on what I'm talking about when a kid gets into a thing. So we played Santorini a bunch, and then at some point we decided to, because there's in the expansion there's Charybdis, the big whirlpool monster.
Okay.
And so then we watched what year would you say that movie came out?
Like 92.
Like it's early 90, the like made for TV movie about Odysseus.
It was low budget.
It was very
low budget.
Pretty sure I saw it.
It's so good. And he was excited about it. And so then we watched the whole movie, and then we come back to Santorini, and we just talk about all the guys. And now we're reading Percy Jackson, which all of these things independent of one another, is not going to paint a full picture. But, eventually, maybe they'll read the
Make
Odyssey.
connections.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, so Santorini, it's so cool, and you can see design inside of it, which is really neat too. You've got these gods, and the gods provide inspiration to the designer because they fit so well within the confines. Because the only thing you're ever doing in a turn is moving a worker and putting a piece of plastic on the board, but it plays 30 different gods uniquely in a very interesting way, and so I don't know, I really enjoyed it a lot. Go ahead, just roll out the rest of yours.
Well, no, what was your number one?
My number one, 1775.
Oh, okay. My number one is Diplomacy. We're not there with the kids yet, but that game teaches you endurance.
It's 7 hours, that's why it teaches you endurance.
It teaches you that
Risk.
you don't need, there's no chance. Like, you are completely in charge of your own destiny, and everybody else you're playing with is also in charge of your destiny.
Right.
And you had better backstab at the right moment, otherwise you're dead.
Teaches you sometimes your mother is a mean monster and she'll get you. Teaches you which one of your friends is really petty and will hold things against you even though it's not to their benefit after you backstab them one little time in a 5 to 7 hour game.
Right, like you have that mutual agreement between England and France to not go in the English Channel. First man in the Channel, that is a little bit of a insult, but not a reason to hold a grudge for the next 6 hours, Chris Reed.
Whoa.
I'm putting it out there.
Name.
I'm just saying.
Pretty sure I heard a similar story during 9 Hole.
Grudges can be built on the simplest of things. Yeah, Diplomacy is really good. So anyone that's not familiar with it, it is basically Risk without dice.
But only in Europe. It's pre-World War I, so you play the factions of Europe, but you don't. The board's divided into areas, but there's no dice rolling. You just talk amongst yourselves on what your moves are going to be, then you secretly write down what your moves are, and then everybody reveals. So you can say to somebody, yeah, I'm not going in the Adriatic, and then you go in the Adriatic, and then maybe they take that personally.
Right. And the best reveals are when you say, I'm pushing into...
I'm supporting Russ into Hamburg. I'm not going to Hamburg.
Yeah. Because
going to Hamburg?
You'll work out these, if your army over here can support me into here, that would be really great, and we'll work things out later. Or I'll support you back into here. Mm-hmm. And then you get these tiny little backstabs where you don't support them into that region, or you don't move into that region. You just wanted to occupy their army. So...
Yep.
But yeah, it's a bunch of little tiny death by 1,000 needles. Is that a raging review of Diplomacy?
But I think it does teach you the politics of that time pretty well.
Either of your kids struggle with losing any of these games, or are they just really good?
Having the right attitude which is why one of the reasons why we don't play the heavier games with them. But all the way through, just not saying it's a game, but keeping it that lighthearted. And usually, if I can see the writing on the wall that they're going down, I try to up the levity. And there are some times in Santorini where you just get to the end and you're like, wow, that god wasn't working for you. So usually I try to laugh at the end if it seems like they're getting upset.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to calling it. So with our background in chess, sometimes we just offer the hand, and say, is this not fun anymore? And we get up and walk away. That's not to say we don't still have outrageous meltdowns over nothing. But if they're on top of their game and that, whatever, fed and have been sleeping, then they're okay-ish.
Right.
That is one thing that my parents realized, because they both grew up in families playing Monopoly, including that kind of thing. And my father's family during the game was extremely cutthroat. But as soon as the game was over, let's play again, rock on. My mother's family, during the game, my grandmother would start feeling sorry for people and, oh, maybe we can bend the rules and oh, blah, blah. And when my parents met as like teenagers and started playing games together, my father's view of that was, you're making it a much bigger deal than it should be. Like, the game is the game. When the game's over, you move on with life. Versus, oh, you're, who you are as a person, and you're going to be so upset after the game. Like, don't do it that way. It's just a game.
Yeah. That makes sense. Simple sense.
And I think it is part of the passage into not just board games, but probably any sort of competitive environment, or an environment where you're not gonna always do well, so is it a thing that you have to learn? Probably. To just take it on the chin and be embarrassed that you goofed up, or upset that you aren't as good as you want to be.
And we
That's a really good way to point it out, because when kids do sports and stuff, it's going to be the same thing. So,
and I think we play other games that do have a lot of luck in them, like Sushi Go. And there are times when I will come out 20 points behind everybody else. And so being able to model what a good loser looks like, and oh my gosh, that could have gone a lot better, I think is also important for them to see.
Right.
Yes, right. Rather than telling them to be cool about it, you need to offer a model. Yeah.
That actually reminds me, whenever we play like Yahtzee or something where like you have to write down everyone's score, my mom, whenever she would be the one writing it down, she would always write loser really big on whoever lost, even if it was her. So she always made it like really light and joking, and then she would write winner too, and it made it better because she would also be totally okay with her being the loser.
Yeah, it's just an extension of being allowed to be wrong.
Yeah.
So, which I am so good at being wrong.
And there are a lot of times, if somebody starts getting upset, I'll be like, you remember the last time we played this game? Who won? They don't remember. I'm like, see, in 5 minutes, you're not going to remember. Or tomorrow, you're not going to remember. This is not going to be a big deal. So let's not fall on the floor and have a hissy fit about it.
That's a great point.
All right. Do you want? We have another top 5. Who's interested?
Subject area.
I didn't make a list.
That's fine. All right. We should just look. We made a top 5 of playing with the kids, which is actually different than top 5 educational. We should compare and see what we have.
We both have King Domino. And I scratched off Camelot. Stuffed Fables. Stuffed Fables is really good if you want to do role playing.
Yeah. So that Stuffed Fables, and when you talk about losing or winning, Stuffed Fables is a fully cooperative game, which when we were growing up, they didn't exist.
We have Scotland Yard.
Scotland Yard is cooperative.
Well, there's one against everybody else.
Okay, yeah. So there were the all versus one, but I don't remember any fully cooperative games growing up.
I think the first one I played was that Camelot one.
Oh, Shadows. That's
Shadows
not fully cooperative either. There's a traitor.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
So here's Lionel from Stuffed Fables. How close can I get to it? Here. Anyway.
That's terrible.
It is terrible. He's got a halo.
You all see each other?
Do what?
Sir?
No, the stream has a camera, but you can't see us. They're asleep.
I was doing something else wrong.
Do what?
Thought I was doing something else wrong. Thanks.
No, you're perfect. But yeah, I guess that's the only one we really added in, is the Stuffed Fables game, because it's not particularly educational. It actually has weird morals at the end. There's some really fun. The boys and Maury haven't gotten into it, but we get to the end and there's like these weird philosophical questions, like, have you ever been in a situation that was hard for you, but you powered through, or have you ever been so sad that, and all of these other things. And then it just poses a couple of questions. And you could have, if your family were open to it, have some pretty cool social type of conversations at the end of that. That game is definitely worth it. And it's a little more approachable than a lot of the other pre-generated dungeon-y type things. So, but that's that. Are you coming? Are you back? Are they asleep?
Lion's asleep. Don't be scared. 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, less than that.
Okay.
But yeah, we're good.
Oh.
So, talked about stuffed fables. I remembered at the end they had those social things. All right.
It's not necessarily based on traditional fables.
No.
So it's not. No, it's not based on traditional fables at all. I would say that it carries a bedtime trope, right? So it's the stuffed animals come alive to protect the little girl from the
monsters under the bed.
Yeah, they're called something. But yeah, basically the monsters under the bed. But it creates its own world from there. And is pretty immersive, I would say. And it's very aware of who its audience is. At no point is it dropping a weird F-bomb in the middle of some of the text or something. Just like sometimes you get some media that's just, this was supposed to be for children. What are you doing?
I hate that with like books and movies and stuff. You go and you expect it to be PG or G, and it's like, why is this PG or G? Because it doesn't seem like it should
exists anymore for movies.
We've walked out of so many.
Yeah, it's like PG is just like you get 2 bad words or something now, right? I don't know what the rules are, but they don't care. The Zootopia.
Oh my God, I hate the movie.
The first 15 minutes of that movie is just like the most hardcore bullying you could possibly imagine. Why? I mean, Disney movies are bad enough when you're talking about killing off their parents or whatever, but maybe children are used to that now. I don't know. But just why the bullying?
I mean, it could have been a little softer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite in-depth.
Yeah. But Stuffed Fables does a very good job. So.
Pretty interesting looking.
Yeah. It's the first. So, again, the games Mari and I played growing up were, you know what it reminds me of? We started a book club, and the first book we read was We.
Yes.
Which it was supposed to, it was like the dystopian novel where, it made the genre, and it was supposed to have been so groundbreaking,
revolutionary.
And we read it, and it
so
was
boring.
It was nothing. It was super boring. But you have to respect it when it creates the genre. But gosh, I was done with it immediately. And some of the games that we were growing up, some of the genres just didn't exist, period.
Yeah.
But they have changed dramatically, and most of them to the good, in as far as design, because they know who they design for an audience. They design the tools that they have to design with are bigger too. There's better companies producing games. There's actual professional designers now. Before it was everybody's history instructor making a war game. But yeah, so Stuffed Fables, the point I was making is that it has the booklet. And so it's the first dungeon game with these booklets. Previously, all the dungeon games were tiles. So you'd have like this gigantic box, and it says, make this map. And 20 minutes later, you've judged, okay, this is a 4x4 square here with a 3x7 hallway attached to it. And it takes a really long time.
And then make your character.
Yeah,
and then 3 hours later, you have your rogue elf ready to go.
Well, that's not. But like Descent has the pre-made characters, but then still you spend your coins or something.
Yeah.
So just no balance between how much time you're investing and what you get out of it. Whereas this game they do everything they can to make it a pretty tight. Because I always lost the kids. I had to drop 3/4 of the rules to have a chance of keeping the kids along for these immersive. Because unfortunately, we're not at a good role-playing game level yet. Probably could be if I had pushed it a little bit more. But the way I got into role-playing games was I had peers, or my brother's peers, show them to me. And I don't want to be the dad. I may have shared this at some point. But I don't want to be the dad that's like, what's my D&D character, everybody? So, anyway, so I don't know how to get them into that. But I want them to create stories. That's very important to me. And so this was a good middle ground. And Stuffed Fables just does a really great job with it. All right. We're wrapping up. It's 10:30. So I'm going to stop the stream. If you guys want to talk a little bit longer, that's cool. Adios.
Ciao.